Sure, I have the right person, buddy. How are you? I'm going to read through your paper as I told you I would and make some comments. And since it's about sports, I will get to learn a lot. The history of sports is a very long and complicated topic. The first major recognition of athletic ability was in 776 BC, at the first Olympic Games in Olympia, Greece. Sports evolved to become neater and more organized, with the idea of team sports being first evident with ancient soccer in Central America nearly 2,000 years ago. I was just watching some documentary about that, ancient soccer. That was crazy. Okay, I love that you go back to the Olympics. Actually, I'm remembering some other piece of writing that I read that was about sports, and I was like, starting with the Olympics always seems like such a good place to start to me when you talk about this. Okay. Since the time of the ancients, modern man has turned the switch on sports up to 11, so to speak. In 1869, the Cincinnati Red Stockings became the first professional baseball club and the first professional club of any sport. Really? Huh. I guess I wondered if there were like cricket leagues or something. I don't know. I don't think like cricket. Okay, from there the industry took off with 8 total Major League Baseball. Let's go ahead and write out Major League Baseball teams by 1900. Hockey followed soon after with the NHL being founded in 1920 and the NBA, not too far after in 1946. Wow, the NBA was 46. Huh. I don't know when I thought it was. It was in the 1920s that sports really began to evolve into what we know sports as today. The decade preceding the Great Depression, remembered as the Roaring Twenties, created the perfect environment for sports to thrive, with people beginning to fully enjoy the products of the Industrial Revolution. As Jim Sumner of Encyclopedia writes, many workers had more leisure time, new and bigger stadiums and gymnasiums were built. The introduction of radio made it easier for fans to keep up with their favorite teams. For the first time, large numbers of Americans began to pay money to watch other people compete in athletic contests. This is what set the stage for the professional sports industry to become the cash cow it is today. The immense growth of sports yielded a lot of revenue for the leagues, and as players began to gain celebrity status around the country, they saw large increases in their salary as well. Okay, I just feel like I should stop real quick, though, and say, so in 1869, the Cincinnati Red Stockings became the first professional baseball club for white people. I know you don't want to go totally off on a tangent, but as someone from Kansas City, where the Negro Leagues were founded, it just made me think about that. Like, I was wondering what year the Negro Leagues teams were started and all that, but I know you may not want to go off on that. Okay. Throughout the history of professional sports, there have been 2 major parties interacting with one another: the owners and the players. I love what you did. Set it up, and then you're saying who you're talking about. But I think what you want there is after another, you want the 2 dots. You want the colon. It's so creepy when I move my fingers that close to the camera. Okay, the colon. I love sentences like that myself. So, blah, blah, blah. This is what you ought to know. Colon. It's too cold to go outside today, or, examples. During pandemic, my examples have really deteriorated in quality. Okay, however, in recent history, i.e. the last 5 or 6 decades, a third party has entered that mix. In this paper, I will discuss this third party and explore what this party is so relevant to keeping the sports industry in a state of equilibrium. Confidently set up. Okay, starting in the 60s, when football players and all athletes generally started making much higher wages, they began to hire agents to negotiate contracts on their behalf. Let's throw in 1960s, just to be totally clear. Part of the reason players felt the need to hire agents was the desire to have more control over where they played, as evidenced by Giamba, somebody who wrote The Professionalization of the Sports Agents, Cartels, Networks, and Enterprises within the Football Industry in a Comparative Perspective, 1950s to 2010. Because that title is so outrageously long, you can definitely just say, as evidenced by blah, blah. When she says, quote, the first agents appeared when football developed an overtly business context in the early 1960s. Favored by the labor reforms against the retain and transfer system obtained by player unions, agents started assisting players in order to fulfill their requests for negotiating contracts. Okay, that said a lot of stuff, and also I'm a particularly good reader of these papers because I don't know anything about this. So the first agents appeared When football developed an overtly business context. Okay, overtly business context, labor market reforms, retain and transfer, requests to negotiate contracts. There is so much in that quote. I definitely think you need to break that up into smaller pieces and talk about each one of those things. You can reference, you do not need to have every bit of that be a direct quote from Ms. Rossi, I guess it is. But you can talk through it and explain each of those pieces and then at the end say where that info came from. Clearly, she is supporting the argument that players needed a form of leverage. Wait, she did? That they need a form of leverage? I don't feel like she said that. Against the owners, so they would not be taken advantage of. Back when the professional sports agency began, an agent's primary job function was to assist their clients with contract negotiations. Then we came back to... definitely where you were going with this, and that's very clear right there, that this is assisting clients with contract negotiations. So yeah, there's so many things happening in this paragraph. Maybe you need a paragraph about assisting with contract negotiations and a paragraph about players being taken advantage of. Maybe that would help. While it is still the main focus of any agent, nowadays professional athletes typically hire agents so they can focus on the demanding aspects of being a pro athlete and let their agent take care of everything that comes off the field. That comes up off the field, maybe? I don't know, that sounds weird too. Jason Belzer, a writer for Forbes.com, detailed why players need to have agents, saying that agents, you don't need to put need in quotes. I think we understand that you don't mean that they're like die without them. Agents speak the language of the league's collective bargaining agreement. I'm guessing there's an apostrophe in the word league there. The league's collective bargaining agreement, because it belongs to them. Endorsement and marketing contracts in the same vein as a player's understanding of the playbook. They are under the impression team contracts, endorsement deals, and other business agreements are believed to be entirely standard form contracts. Wow, yeah, I have no idea what that means. I hope you're about to tell me. In other words, agents are educated in a manner that they understand all the gibberish and jargon. Okay, that ends up being included in the contracts. So for that quote, I would go through and see exactly what do you need to quote. I think all you maybe need to quote is agents speak the language of the blah, blah, blah. In the same vein as player. I think playbook might be where you want to stop that quote, because this last part started to confuse me. They're under the impression that blah, blah are believed to be, I don't know what that was saying. So I would take that part out. In other words, agents are educated men, they understood. Okay, sorry. For a world-class athlete trying to make a living for himself and his family, or her family, he shouldn't be focusing on anything besides perfecting his craft and becoming better at what they do. Why? Don't they have time to deal with other things? That's why it is important. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's why it's important for them to have someone in their corner to fight off the field for them, especially someone who is well-versed in the industry. I would say fight for them off the field. Because I think when you say someone in their corner to fight off the field for them, I'm imagining them getting in a bar fight with someone from the Major League Baseball office or something. Amazingly, sports have developed from leisure activities and shows of human ability thousands of years ago to becoming a major part of many people's lives. That extreme has been taken to the point where some of the most prominent athletes today have multi-hundred-million-dollar contracts, such as Mike Trout of the MLB. Oh, God, Patrick Mahomes. Well, but doesn't he deserve it? And Damien, the highest paid player in the NBA. This stream of cash flowing into sports is evidence of the great cultural impact sports have, at least in America, as people are willing to shell out obscene amounts of money. They are. To watch the best athletes in the world push the limits of the human body. It makes sense that the profession of agency eventually found its way into sports, as the relationship between an athlete and an agent is a mutually beneficial one. Okay, and then let's look at your works cited. That all looks all right. And did you have page numbers? So for MLA style, you need the page numbers in the upper right hand. And you can look up exactly how to do that. If you're doing APA style, which I don't think you are, But if you're doing APA style, that would be a little different. What I would recommend to you is to always make an outline before you write. Always, always, always before you write a paper, because you have tons of good stuff in here, but I definitely can find places where, like when we get to that last paragraph, I was like, does this belong here? I kind of felt like maybe that should be the introduction rather than the conclusion. And that still may be the case. You might want to look at that. But yeah, you need to make an outline. Most people do. I do. But I think that could really, really help you to make sure that the good stuff you have ends up in the places where it is the strongest organization-wise. Okay, I hope that's helpful, and I hope you have a lovely day.